story starts by describing a young lady. I put her maybe between her 20s and 30s, who moves into uh, an establishment, a drinking establishment, a bar maybe you want to call it. She moves into the second or third floor, um, where she works, but also spends her time. She lives there. She's had a past in the military, but we don't know this. We just know that she's quiet. Uh, her movements are always calculated. She just has a way about her. The person who hires her is a Vietnam veteran, so he or she picks up certain points when he's watching her, and he gives her this job. She's quiet, she's hardworking, she's dependable, but she also senses that she has a story to tell. So one of those days, there's a visit to the bar by a biker gang. The biker gang is quite rowdy. They have a leader of the pack who throws his weight around, likes to show that he's boss. So he comes in, and once in a while he rushes, or he approaches the owner of the bar and asks for money or dues, really in a sense, for protection. He wants to, or the taxi, or rather uh, the bar is his haven, is their haven for extracting money from the city or from the people in the locality. And so this biker gang takes advantage of this community and the owner of this bar in particular, extorting him and asking for dues, for payment, for protection, and things of that nature. This normally happens with crime, where gangs take control of our city, and because the standard systems of operation for police and the army are disintegrated or don't have access or have been pushed out of the city, these gangs create a sense of authority of their own hierarchy. And so they will often approach small establishments, bars, mom and pop shops, where they demand payment or for protection. Really, they're protecting against other gangs and them themselves. So that's the setting. He comes in and begins to make demands, and this happens week after week. All this time, the lady who is living in the third floor or the second floor, the loft of the restaurant or the bar, is just quiet, but you could see she's wanting to react. She wants to help this person who has been kind to her and who is hosting her, who has provided her a job and a place to stay. You could say she's homeless in the sense that she has no place to go, and her job is her only security, but also now she's starting to feel a sense of responsibility for her host. So there's a relationship that has been built over the years, or over the few months in which she's been in employment. But she's getting extremely uncomfortable every time this biker gang visits, and this man lords himself over the bar owner, the older bar owner, who also happens to be a Vietnam veteran. So at some point, the exchange comes to a head, and she steps in. Her movements are controlled, as I said before. You can tell that now it's becoming clear that she has spent some time in the military. After quite an exchange, the head of the biker gang pushes her up a bit, and then notices that she very rarely puts on a shirt that has its sleeves, that has short sleeves. So in the exchange, they manage to reveal, or to manage to get her to take off her shirt, which ends up revealing that she's actually a veteran from the army, but she's not just a veteran, which was part of the special forces, actually elite special forces. So a few of those who have served recognize this, and in the confrontation they kind of step back. But the leader of the gang, of course, the leader of the pack, is not intimidated by her. He actually starts to think in terms of how is he going to take control of the situation and continue to intimidate her, or hopefully even hurt her. So she takes him on with an engagement in which she uses her skills to slow down his movements, but not before he manages to land a blow or two on her. The description that the author uses is quite vivid, very well written. That's why I recommend that you listen to it on your own. In the confrontation, the leader of the pack, leader of the biker gang, uses a few techniques to intimidate her. He reminds her of her past. He reminds her of the fact that she probably was dishonorably discharged. That she's probably lost some people in her force or in her regiment, whatever you want to call it. And so he's in a sense picking at her wounds as he fights her and as he confronts her. Miraculously, though, some of the people that are in the bar at this time, having watched the situation, begin to stand up against this man. So the courage in the room, or the current in the room shifts. One of the people in the room calls the police, and in a short while the gang leader is arrested. Cutting a long story short, she ends up being celebrated for her stance, ability to stand up against this injustice. Later on, she ends up appearing at a Senate committee hearing, speaking about Veterans Affairs. This particular facility is transformed into a place where people that have served in the military can have support for trauma, stress, and psychological issues of that nature. And here's where I want to draw comparisons to some specific aspects of the faith. While I don't celebrate, or I don't like to think of how many years people have put in the kingdom, I think it's still important for us to celebrate that there is a not obvious but existing hierarchy in terms of how long people have served. We have to acknowledge that. People who have fathered us, or who have had an important contribution in our faith, people who have been trailblazers, people who have established churches, people who have been in the kingdom for longer periods of time, have lessons that they can teach us. Of course, there are exceptions. Sometimes you will find stories of young people who had messages from God, so to speak, who received bad advice from older people who should have known better. But that's a story for another day. The fact is, we have to honor those who have put in time and who have come before us, who have set the pace, who have led us, who have fathered us, who have quote-unquote mothered us as well, who have come before us and who have shown us the way. So in the faith I think you have the same parallel. You have people who have been faithful to God, maybe in several churches, people who led us to believe, led us to the faith, led us to Christ, who for some reason fell away or got discouraged and maybe seemed to have fallen off by the roadside. You will meet them in all sorts of places. Maybe sometimes you will meet them at a party and you see them sitting on their own. You wonder if they're people of the faith at all. Maybe you watch them doing things you don't expect them to do, or maybe they won't be doing anything at all. But you will notice that they have a different spirit. Sometimes this comes from hurt. Sometimes this comes from things that they've seen in the faith that have hurt them, or where they themselves feel like they have hurt others or left others, in a sense, in the battlefield, or lost others in the battlefield. And this is something that you find in the faith, because you will see relationships that have been broken, maybe after church splits, where the worship leader takes off with half the congregation and leaves the pastor alone, starts a church of his own. Maybe issues of slander, maybe cases where someone was mistreated and never got justice, and the whole church stand against them. Maybe the pastoral leadership handling something wrongly handling an issue, not failing to resolve an issue that was done to a member, and siding instead with the mass of the people in the church. So you'll find lots of people that are, in a sense, veterans in the faith, but that were hurt. They can still be valuable members of the community and of the church if they find one person to in a sense shepherd them, or to stand up with them in that critical moment. So this lady that had served in the special forces and that had, in a sense, was now homeless and just trying to forget everything that she had gone through, had a thing where she was forced to stand up for a fellow believer, because the veteran, you could consider the veteran to be a fellow believer. As she was fighting for this man, or for this person, you noticed that her adversary was making great efforts to remind her of what she was in the past and what she could have faced, and the trauma that had driven her to be a loner and to be quiet and not to think of herself as being useful to society anymore. And that's what happens in the faith as well. Or you failed, or you fell into sin, or how many people have you led to the Lord, or how many people have fallen away because of what you did. So there's all this spiritual trauma that we carry around after years of service, that drives us back, that prevents us from continuing to serve Him faithfully. But we can't overcome it. One moment of bravery can lead so many others to stand up with us in defense of the oppressed, of the poor, and of the hurting, of the less fortunate. So in a sense, this is an encouragement to those of you who feel like you're veterans of the faith, who are suffering with scars from battles you fought, relationships that have been destroyed, maybe issues of manipulation or control that you faced, alienation in the faith from people you thought would love you, would welcome you, in a system that's become so structured that it's lost its sense of love and purpose. So as you listen to that story, as you go through it, I think you'll appreciate, or at least I would love you to appreciate, the spiritual angle to this story. Yes, there's also quite a lot of material that you will appreciate from those of you who are in the military, who have served, and as they say in America, thank you for your service, but also in Uganda and everywhere else where people devote their lives towards serving their countries. We'll celebrate you and we'll thank you for what you do, especially those of you who do it with a pure heart, with a desire to defend your countries and your flags. So those are the thoughts that I have for you, especially around this subject, or where we celebrate those who have been champions of the faith, those who defended their countries, those who have been true patriots. And maybe at a time when we're facing a lot of disagreement and splits between opinions, especially when these opinions are heated, let's take time to celebrate those who have fought battles on our behalf, both real physical battles as well as spiritual ones. And let's just take some time to appreciate them. Find a way of either saying thank you, or sharing a meal, or sending a card, sending flowers, appreciating the families of those who are still with us, as well as celebrating the lives of those who have gone before us. That's what I came up with, or that's what came to my mind after reading or watching this YouTube video describing a story about a veteran and a wounded soldier who was suffering from post-traumatic stress as well as guilt and many other issues around mental health. Once again, thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. We'd love to engage with you a little more on this subject, but feel free to listen to the video, which we'll share in the comments, which I think you'll find valuable.